Hi Arun, this is Biswajit from Nairobi. How are you?
Hey Biswajit, I'm great. How are you?
Fine, fine. Are you
Great.
okay now? Yesterday you have some problem in your voice tone,
I think
some cough
so.
problem.
Should be good today. We should not experience a lot of disturbance in my voice. It should be fine today. Yeah.
Hi Arun, it's
Arun, I
Nasir.
am.
How's your condition now about your throat?
It's fine now. I hope the session won't be disturbed much with the cough, but it's okay. It will take time, maybe a week's time, due to the sudden weather change. And to be very frank, guys, I'm very careless in terms of, I mean, taking medicine on time. So that is
It's
something.
obvious you are IT guy, na? It's obvious you are careless.
No, only that part I'm careless. Otherwise, other domains are managed well.
Yeah, I can understand you do a lot of stuff. I've seen your so many things over the internet now.
Okay, yeah, great, yeah.
Great, great.
Nice.
Hey Arun,
Yeah, tell me,
I
Biswajit.
have one request.
Tell me, yeah.
Can you change the schedule rather than in the evening time? Can you make it in the morning 8:30 in the IST
Uh,
Indian time?
it won't be possible actually.
Because
Yeah, tell me.
because some guys are from EST time from at the time it is early morning.
I actually did consider this before scheduling. So for them, it is early morning, like 5 a.m. close to, and I think in CST it goes around 4 a.m. I know that's one challenge, but to be very frank, Biswajit, being on a global scale, and we have people from every corner, any time would be a problem for one or the other guy. So I think,
Only Saturday is the problem for me. I am 2.5 hours behind the Indian Standard Time.
okay.
Even also, I am giving support in the Saturday to my clients because I am working in a banking environment.
Okay.
So that's why. If it is possible, otherwise it's okay.
I'll see the feasibility, but rather than that, what I can do is like today I got good time in the morning. So rather than waiting to publish the video on Monday, I did it today. So that is something what I can do is like I can publish the videos on the same day rather than we all wait until Monday. So that way, I think if you are missing the Saturday content, so Sunday morning you can brief up yourself with the Saturday video and then continue with the session.
Yeah, but the thing is that online is very interesting, so that we can ask some questions.
So in that way,
Okay. No, also,
right.
I can adjust.
Okay. So guys, we have anything else before we start the session?
Hi Arun.
Yeah. Hi. Is it Kamal?
Yes, Arun.
Yeah. Hi.
How are you? How are you feeling now?
It's okay now.
Oh, great. We can't afford that.
No worries. Okay, guys. So if nothing important, we'll start off today's session. So let's get started. I think we are just falling short of 5 more people to join the call. As I mentioned, we had 35 enrollments, 35 or 36. So we have 30 today on the call, and I hope no one is having issues with the audio. So great, guys. Let me just start my screen. Can you guys see the slide now? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Right. So we'll start off with the Golden Gate architecture. Now I'll not directly. Okay, guys. I'm sorry. Actually, I have written something for you guys. Let me start off with that one. Then I'll come back to this topic. I want you guys to know about this one first before we start the session. I think this we were supposed to discuss yesterday, but then I just completely lost it. So what's the main difference between Golden Gate and Data Guard? This is something, it's a very important interview question. And if you can answer this question, like all the points which I'll be listing right now, and if you answer it in this way, trust me, with this answer, anyone who's taking your interview can judge your depth of understanding of Golden Gate and Data Guard. And just a loophole in case even if you don't know what is data guard or did not get chance to practice on data guard, if you just know these points and can elevate in an interview, like what's the difference between Golden Gate and data guard, you will actually stand a good chance. So Oracle Golden Gate versus data guard. We have few points. We need to understand this one from a different perspective, and now you will understand there are chances that sometimes you won't use Golden Gate, rather you will go for a data guard. Yes, there are chances. Of course, some reasons on a general note I can give you is like the costing. Sometimes Oracle Golden Gate is very costly while you want to maintain a standby system, so you can go with the physical standby. So that's where like costing issues come. So let us look at the differences in different domains. Okay, over here I'll be talking about this is Golden Gate and this is data guard. I'll just list some points and then we'll see what all are supported by Golden Gate and what is supported by data guard. We'll start with query offloading. Right, in the query offloading, the best part is it is supported by both. Now you might have questioned how we can do query offloading in data guard. It's nothing but you configure a logical standby or you configure active data guard, right? So that's a query offloading. Next is high availability. In this one, this is again supported by both. Like definitely in a data guard, you can have active data guard, and also it will provide you high availability whenever there is issue with the primary site, right? Next is unidirectional full replication. Full replication. This is again supported by both in Golden Gate also and in data guard. You can have full database copy from primary site to the standby site. Next is heterogeneous replication. This is something is supported only by Golden Gate, but it is not supported by data guard, because data guard will only work on the same OS as your primary site. So it's like your standby should be exactly on the same operating system and hardware as your primary site, right? Next is I'm just guessing like which one we can include: heterogeneous replication and also data transformation. See, when you are replicating from one source to the target and you want to actually change the data, let's take in the source the date format is in a different way and on the target the date format is in a different way. That is only possible with Golden Gate and it is not possible with data guard. That is about the data transformation, right? And then one more important point is like set of data for replication. So the meaning is like okay, in Golden Gate you can do it, in data guard you can't do it. So what is this set of data? That means let's take, I just want to configure replication for one table, one schema and set of tables. Then I can go only with Golden Gate because data guard will be your complete database level copy. So in this term, what I would say is like data guard is just Control C and Control V of your primary site. It's the exact copy. There are no restrictions or no limitations until it is a logical standby. That's a different case again. And then you have bidirectional replication. Guys, please make a note of this one because I won't be saving this, and make sure you note down all these points. It's supported by Golden Gate and it is not supported by data guard. Okay, so bidirectional replication, I mean you get it only with the Golden Gate. That is one good benefit. Now after knowing so many benefits, you might still have question like, come on Arun, we have so many benefits, but somewhere we must get a benefit of data guard over Golden Gate. Otherwise, see, if you look at this column and if we are getting everything from Golden Gate, then we can completely remove data guard technology, right? So what is that one benefit which can surpass Golden Gate and you will consider data guard over Golden Gate? That is in one condition, that is alter database and alter system. This is not supported by Golden Gate, but it is supported by data guard. If you want a complete system like control C, control V, whatever the sys user is doing, whatever the base tables are having, everything is control C and control V. That is where data guard stands out. Now, if you want to set up a replication, of course, this will be a little challenging. If you want to set up a replication for a system where you want everything like from the sys user to all the users exactly like the primary site, then you would choose data guard over Golden Gate. And when to choose Golden Gate? Only in case you have some set of data. Actually, this is pretty precise. If you have some set of data which needs to be replicated, like table schema, something like that, right? And if there is a data transformation involved, also if you have multiple vendor databases and operating systems which are actually supported by the Golden Gate, so that's when only you will use Golden Gate. Otherwise, some cases, many a times, data guard is enough. Now again, it depends from environment to environment. These are just few points to make you guys understand about how, I mean, when to use when to use Golden Gate and when to use data guard. Okay, that's just an overview, guys. I'll just keep this one. Okay, let's start. Now, before I start off with this one, let us in general talk about, okay, we'll actually design our own technology, right? We understood how the conversion of IT industry, or how organizations evolved from paperwork to IT industry, right? The 1-tier architecture, 2-tier architecture, and now we also have 3-tier architecture. Now in this evolution, after evolution, we got this responsibility to design a product that can perform replication. We'll take Oracle as an example. I don't want to take any other database as an example. So we all 30 odd people are now designing a new replication technology. Okay, so we'll put in our ideas, and then I will actually match up these ideas with the Golden Gate architecture. See, we have a source DB, we have a target DB. Now somebody told us that, okay, we don't want to use data guard, but I just want a table to be replicated. So what can we do? We are, okay, these are just assumptions. We are assuming MVs are not there, and we are also assuming DB links are not there. Okay, just in case. So client is saying don't use any of these or any native Oracle features, but design a new application. So we'll just figure out some ideas. We will define the logical steps. The simple way is, there is a table. Now in this table, if any changes happen, okay, when I say changes, it will be two types of changes, which are DML and DDL, right? These two are most important one. So initially I'll just talk about DML because we have a separate session for DDL commands. Okay, so we'll deal with the insert, update, delete commands. Those are the DMLs which are executed on a table. Now when a user is executing any DML command, right, so that is the same command I want to be executed on target as well, right? This is my source, this is target. This is the basic requirement. Now what we can do is, we can have client connected to both the systems at one time. And just an idea, okay, I'm just coming up with some ideas. And whenever this user is issuing a query, it is executed on both the systems. That is like SQL execution. This is something we can do, but there is a problem. You cannot connect to like two databases simultaneously while you are querying, and that is spread onto multiple databases. You again need some kind of new technology in between that captures the SQL and distributes the SQL onto different DBs. So this rule is not possible. So what can we do next? The simple idea is I need to capture, okay? I need to capture the DMLs from source. Now the question is when to capture. This is the first step. I need to capture the DMLs, but the question is when to capture. The simple way to capture is I will capture. Okay, understand. A user has issued some update command. The update is running for 2 hours. Okay, and it is continuing over there. And immediately what I do is I take the SQL and then I start applying it onto the target. This is a scenario I'm saying. After the update is completed, the user rolled back the transaction. So what's the problem? Again, these rollbacks, all the commands will be re-executed onto the target. So this is overhead. That means we are wasting a lot of resources. So the best way is when to capture means whenever the transaction is committed. Right? So if a transaction that is executed on the source and if it is committed, I want it to be captured. That means there should be a capture process which can capture these DMLs. Now the next question is from where to capture. The simple answer is all our SQL transactions are written into redo logs, correct? Redo or archives. See, it's so simple. We are just designing a product. We are understanding the logical steps. So I say that the step number 1 in my replication is to capture the transactions. When to capture, I just want them to be captured only when it is committed or when the transaction is committed, because I don't want any overhead when user rollbacks the transaction. And then where to capture means I'll be capturing it from redo or archive logs. Correct? Because that's where I have all my transactions. Now after capturing, I need to send it to the target server, right? So that means the second step in my entire design would be to send changes. Perfect. So we need to send changes from the source system to the target system. Now on the target system, these changes are to be applied, correct? That means the third step would be apply. So as per the logical design of our new product, I have 3 stages. First, I need to capture the transactions. Next, I need to send those changes to the target server. On the target, I need an apply process to apply the changes received. Correct. This is so simple architecture. Now, this is the same architecture that we have with Golden Gate, exactly same, but there are further steps which we'll be understanding in some time. So we have one question like what's the cost difference between Golden Gate and Data Guard? It depends. If you are using active Data Guard, then definitely you have more license. The other ones are free for your requirement. Now these are new files which are created on the target server. Like we have source trail, the same type of files are created onto the target server. And then we have a delivery process or apply process or also a replicate process. These are the 3 names for this one. Replicate, deliver or apply process all are one and the same. So replicate will read from the target trail files and apply it onto the target system. This is the general flow. Now in Golden Gate, we also have manager process. It's a process which actually governs most of your Golden Gate processes. Like before you can start off extract and data bump, you need to start the manager process. And manager process actually deals with the port, I mean the communication port on which the Golden Gate processes will communicate to each other. For example, the manager process on both the system, let's take that this you have set the port number over here something like 8800, and over here the port number is different 8811. Now this kind of information resides with the manager process, and all the extracts, I mean the data pump mostly, it will use this port number information to send the data onto the target server. So more on, I mean we have a lot of slides on each and every process. You will understand a lot of things over there. So we'll discuss about each process in detail, right? So simple flow, very simple. Now, okay, I'm going out of the topic. Let us look at the bidirectional replication architecture. Okay, this is the source. You have extract, ext, and then you have source trails, right? These are the files that we have. And then we have pump process, right? The pump process will send the data onto the network, and we have collector process. Collector will write into target trails. These are the target trail files, and from here apply process or replicate. Replicate will apply it onto the target DB, right? This is how the general architecture is. This is unidirectional. Now it is flowing from source to target. But what happens in bidirectional replication? Exactly same, but the components will be reversed. So on the target system, okay, if you are configuring the bidirectional replication, this one becomes source. This one becomes target. Initially, this system was source, right? This is how it works. So everything will be reversed. We need to configure an extract over here. Extract will write into source trail because this has become the source right now. And then we have pump process. Next, the pump will send the data in the reverse direction where we have collector. Collector will write into target trails. Very simple, right? And from the target trails, the replicate will read and it will apply it onto this target DB. So if you look at the bidirectional architecture, even though we have a separate slide for this one, I know it's very early to talk, but still we have all processes configured on each server. We have extract, pump, collector, and replicate. So this kind of scenario will only come in when you are doing bidirectional replication. We have a separate session for bidirectional, but I'm just showing you like a difference between unidirectional and bidirectional. It's very simple. The entire architecture is reversed. So both the servers will have all the processes of Golden Gate. Now you might ask, if I don't know if you guys really got this question, but I used to always have this question, like why Golden Gate is the best player in the market. There should be a reason, right? Again, guys, this is like too early to talk about this one, but I'll still speak about this. So this is source system. This is target. And the main reason why Golden Gate is number one in the world is the architecture is modular. Okay, everything has been divided into dedicated components, and you can scale the components on your requirement. For example, let's take we have extract process. Extract writes to source trail. Source trail is read by the data pump. Data pump sends over the network. Then we have collector process, target trails. Then we have replicate. It pushes the transaction to target. This is the general flow, right? But what if you have a lot of data? Understand, in this replication, we are it's taking a lot of time for the replication. The best part is you can increase the number of extracts. Okay, ext3. This is the best part. Now this is in case when you have issues with while reading the data from the source. The same way, if you get huge amount of data, but we are seeing a lot of problem with the replicate. Like replicate is not efficiently able to apply the transactions onto the target. So what you do is you can simply increase the replicate processes. The same goes with data pump, and nothing goes with collector. I mean, okay, we will talk about collector later. Okay, so data pump also you can scale in whenever you need, and also the job of data pump is to read from the source trail and push, right? Same way, what I can do is I can configure multiple pump processes which are pushing onto different target servers. This is why, this is the main reason why Golden Gate is number one in the market, because of the modular architecture. You can scale up, scale down things as per your requirement. Let us talk about the extract process. Now, again, in extract process, like I'm going back to the same example. Like we are given the responsibility of designing the product. So when we are designing about, let's take when we design the capture process, right? What is the ideal job of the capture process? Or we are just assuming what it should do. It should, these are our redo logs. I'm not considering the archives. So in redo, whatever transactions are written, and whenever it finds the DML, again, as I said, DDL will discuss later. If any DML command is found, capture it. Correct? So this will be captured and pushed onto the target server. This is what we already know about the extract process. But again, there are multiple conditions and multiple types of extract. Do you think you will always use capture to just read from redo and write it onto the source trail? Not really. There are again further scenarios where you will understand what are the types of extracts. Also, as I told you, data pump is also one type of secondary extract. So the job of extract process is to capture the insert, update, delete, nothing but our DMLs. But you can even configure the extract process to capture the DDL changes. So we'll talk about DDL later. Next is capture change via transaction logs, nothing but our redo or archive logs. Only committed changes are captured. This is very important point. Many people in interview, they confuse candidate by saying that, okay, one guy issued, again same example, one guy issued an update command which ran for 2 hours, and your Golden Gate replication is also enabled. After that, user issued a rollback. So what will happen onto the target size? This is just a confusing question, but if you look at the scenario, the user never committed the transaction. So Golden Gate will capture only the committed transactions. So what are the types of extract processes? We have 3 types of extract process. Local extract. It's very simple. Local extract is nothing but a normal extract or capture process that writes into source trail. Once again, normal extract process is the one which captures the transactions and writes into source trail. This is very important point. And again, we have already seen that data pump is also one kind of extract process, but it's a secondary extract. Next is initial load extracts. This is a very typical condition which we all will understand right now. Now assume there is a table, okay? Or let us look at this in this way. Your management asks you to implement Golden Gate, okay? Now assume your source database is being built from the scratch. You are actually building the source database. So what you will have only table structure, right? You will only have table structure, but you won't have any rows, only table structure. In this case, what I can do is on the target also, I can create the table structure, same as source. And just I have the table header, that is nothing but column names. In this case, let's take I configure the Golden Gate like this. So what will happen whenever there is an insert in this table, Golden Gate will replicate it over here also, right? So if there is an insert, update, delete, whatever commands are run, the insert, update, deletes will be captured onto this new destination. But the problem starts, It's very unfortunate, or maybe if you get this kind of situation, then good, when you have completely new servers where you need to configure the replication. But that case never happens in real time, because you configure Golden Gate on the database which contains the table which already has data. I repeat, you will always encounter this situation that you need to configure replication on the source where you already have rows. Now, what can be done in this case? Because it's a simple scenario, right? See, Golden Gate will capture only insert, update, deletes. But when you have, let's take this table is having 20 rows, just an example, 20 rows, and I'm asked to configure the Golden Gate. So if I want a real-time replication, before even I can configure the Golden Gate, I should have these 20 rows on the target also, right? That is when both the targets, both the databases or both these tables will be in sync. Next, going forward, whenever there is an insert, update, delete, it will be an identical copy. So this thing, or this process of getting the already existing rows from source to target is known as initial load. Okay, I repeat, this process where your source is already having the rows or already having data in the table, you need to fetch that data from the source to target, right? And this entire process is called as initial load. This is not replication. Replication is insert, update, delete, and that is pushed onto the target server. Okay, insert, update, delete. If anything happens on source, that is pushed onto the target. But if the table is already containing rows, then I need those rows over here, right? Otherwise tables will not be in sync. So this process is known as initial load. Very important term, and this is what we are also going to do in our course. Okay, now we got this idea about what is initial load. So okay, let us assume these 20 rows are there. I want these 20 rows over here. How can I get it? Simple. I can export and import, right? If I'm using both source and target as Oracle. Simple as that. But the change or the challenge would be when both are not same. Then you again need to use a third-party utility to get those already existing data in the tables onto the target server. In this case, Golden Gate will help you. You don't need to purchase any third-party product in order to perform the initial load. So you can configure an extract separately in Golden Gate that will help you to perform an initial load, and then you configure a local extract in order to continue with the replication. Okay, so I hope that this is clear, but once again I'll repeat the things. In general, when you configure Golden Gate, you are very unlike to get an environment where only blank tables are there, and then they will ask you to configure Golden Gate until it's a new environment. But if you are configuring it on an existing environment, source will definitely contain tables which is having already data. So before you set replication, you need this data onto the target site as well, right? So this process of getting the data from source to target is known as initial load. So what we do is, in initial load, we make the tables as exact copy and then enable replication. That's when we can say that these are true copy of each other. If there is no initial load, and if you are performing only insert, update, deletes, then definitely both the tables will not be in sync, right? So for this purpose, we also have a special type of extract which is known as initial load extract. Some people, I have seen this one. Some people, what they do is they overlook the initial load extract when the source and target are both Oracle. They actually use export import utility, because after export import, definitely source and target are same, and then they can directly enable the normal replication. So normal replication is enabled using the local extracts. There is a note: source and target databases need to have same structure for setting up replication. Okay, so when we say about same structure, again this is limited to a situation. Now when we talk about structure, it should be like okay, understand okay, I'm just thinking of what example to give. So we have this source table and we have this target table. The columns that you plan to map, okay, the columns that you plan to map, at least, because you can even choose that, so at least you should have the same structure in those scenarios. That means whatever the source table structure is, it should be same in the target. But honestly, I think I should remove that point over here, because in heterogeneous environment, if you define like the columns in a different data type on source, because every vendor will have its own data types, right? So maybe in Oracle, if we call it as number, it might not be exactly number in the others. Maybe it can be integer, right? So in this kind of cases, I think we should remove this point. Does not make that much sense. Okay. So about the extracts, once again, we'll talk about the extracts. Extracts will capture insert, update, delete. You can even configure for DDL changes, like you alter the table and modify the table. Those kind of changes also we can capture. I mean, changes are captured via the transaction logs. Only committed transactions are captured, and there are three types of extract process. One is local extract, that will read from the transactions and write it onto the source trail. Next is a data pump extract, that will read from the source trail files. Okay, I'll open. So data pump will read from the source trail files, push it onto the target server. Again, data pump is also one type of extract process. And then we have a special type of extract that is known as initial load extract, that will read from the source table the existing data and push it onto the target database. So guys, any doubts till now? We have some.
Aaron, this is Suman.
Yeah, hi Suman, tell me.
Yeah, what is the main significance of data pump extract? What is the main difference between local extract and data pump extract? On which case data pump is needed?
Every case. We in the further slides you will understand. Data pump is for sending data. Extract is for getting data from the source. That's the best difference, I believe.
Oh, just for sending the data. Okay.
Yeah. So is the pump process mandatory to have in Golden Gate? No, but it is highly recommended. We are about to see that point. So pump process is not mandatory, but it is very highly recommended. I mean, I'll talk about the scenario what can go wrong if you don't have pump process. Okay. What about using when index rebuild is going on, when Golden Gate is configured, how it works? Okay, that's a good question. I'll talk about this when we are dealing with the Golden Gate performance. I mean, we have a topic on this. And then the source maybe prod, then in that case how you establish initial load extracts. So I'm just thinking like what's the problem, that why can't we make prod as the source? If there is any server performance issues, then what you can do is, if you have a data guard setup, that is known as downstream extract. I think these all questions will be answered during the slide, so I will ignore these questions, some of them. And the how it's possible to do the initial load. A good question. You will understand this one. Okay, guys, I'll be very frank with you. I will not explain the questions bits and pieces if they are about to be answered in the course. Okay, so just I'll just overlook the questions. See, this heterogeneous environment, how is it possible to perform initial load? When we are doing the project, you will understand, because in the project we are dealing with two different types of vendors. Can we have multiple extracts and during the initial load? Generally not. It is not preferred to have multiple, but 99% of the time people will will go with only one. You will understand why in some time when I'll be discussing the problems of DML and DDL captures. You will understand what is the problem of having multiple extracts and when to have multiple extracts, when to not have multiple extracts, when to have multiple replicates, when to not have multiple replicates. There are again pros and cons for all these steps. Okay, so because the source is 1 TB. Yeah, who's this?
Arun, this is Suman.
Yeah, someone tell me.
Yeah, just I want to know, are you going to cover Golden Gate patching in the future sessions?
I think we have a topic like patching in Golden Gate. Yes, we do have that topic.
Yeah,
We'll
okay,
be
thank you.
looking at. That is something again. If the database is 1 TB, I would recommend you to perform an RMN clone. I mean, again, it depends what is your requirement. So go with RMN clone, get the source backups, perform a clone, and then perform the replication on the tables you want. So yes, there are some shortcuts also to get the things done. And if the source is DB2, I'm sorry guys, I'm not aware of DB2. Most of the times, if you ask me questions about DB2 or any other database which is supported by Golden Gate, which I have not worked, maybe I can only give you an idea as per my experience, but I may not be very good at the other things. Because one guy cannot learn all the vendors which are supported by Golden Gate, right? So regarding DB2, I think you need to check with further. Even I don't know whether there is a possibility of any integration that you can combine DB2 with Oracle. Okay. So for DB2, I would request you to research a little bit. I'm not sure about it. Yeah. Maybe even I can try with my friends if I get this doubt. Yeah. Let's continue. Golden Gate data pump process.
Yeah, Arun,
Yeah.
here on this Pankaj.
Yeah, Pankaj, tell me.
Yeah. So Arun, one question here. Is it mandatory to have at least Oracle database, either source or target?
No,
Or can we
no, not mandatory. It's a heterogeneous player, means if you want to set up replication into source and target, you can choose the other vendors also. But honestly, because I'm an Oracle DBA primarily, so that's the reason I'm at least choosing source or the target as the Oracle, even in the what do you call the projects? Yeah. But I guess, guys, because we all are experienced people, will pick up the things when we know how to manage the Golden Gate processes, because that will be same in any scenario, whether it is Oracle database or any other database. Yeah,
Okay.
right. So next we have is data pump process. As I mentioned earlier, it's a type of secondary extract process. Many a times, if you talk to old people, okay, old I means the people who are working on Golden Gate for a long time, they also sometimes will say that, you know what, I need to configure an extract which will send data from this server to this server. So you don't have to get confused. They just mean they want to configure a data pump process. So data pump is many a times some people call it as secondary extract, or they'll just use extract process as well, but don't get confused over there. Okay, so it's a type of secondary extract process. Yes, it's a type of secondary extract process, but there is a point. It is optional process, but highly recommended. Now again, one more question arises over here. Fine, if this process is optional, let us assume we have source and target. Extract ext will write into source trails, right? There is no pump process that can send the source trail onto the network. Over here we have collector process, then remote trails, then we have replicate process. The transactions will be applied. Now the question is, if we say that data pump is optional, so the question is, who will send the data onto the target? You know what, in the extracts, you can even configure an extract which will directly send the data onto the target. This is also possible. But there are pros and cons of using this kind of extract. There are a lot of issues. I mean, trust me, you can entirely collapse your environment with this kind of setup. Don't use, this is out of experience I'm saying, don't use extracts to directly send the data onto the target. Yes, it is possible to configure an extract that is writing to source trail and that is also sending data onto the target. So this situation arises when you don't want to use data pump. Once again, I repeat, if you're not using data pump process, you can configure secondary extracts which can write into source trail and also send the data onto the target server. But do not use this configuration. I'm warning you guys, do not use this configuration. Don't even practice also. It is just waste of time. Nobody uses it in real time. Okay, don't even practice it. And I have seen a lot of courses online or a lot of tutorials online where I don't know why they just skip the data pump process in order to simplify the training. But there's no point in training someone in a wrong way, which is not used in real time. So don't practice this also. If you get a chance also, don't try to Google or use it. In case if you want to have some extra knowledge, maybe you can just read about it, but don't try to configure this thing. I'll tell you what's the problem in some time. So this data pump is optional, but it is highly recommended. So why it is highly recommended, we'll understand in some time. So data pump is a type of secondary extract process, reads from trail files and sends them over network. That's the simple job of data pump process. It will it will read from the source trail and send it over to the target server. In case of network issues, data pump waits until network is established and starts sending trails to target again. Okay, we have this point here only. Great. Now coming back to the same scenario, why I recommend not to use this kind of extract. Let us assume this extract is there, right? There are two jobs of this extract. One is to first write into the source file. This is the first job. Second job is this extract itself will read from the source and then send it on to the target. Okay, this is the job of the extract process, right? Now, okay, this is a situation when we are not configuring the data pump. Okay, so this extract, assume there is a network issue. You know what happens? It will not write into source trails. So you will not get any source trail, but your database will continue to execute or continue to run. In this situation, what will happen? If source trail are not generated after the network is established, then you have missing transactions. Some transactions are missing because source trail were never generated. This is the main reason why it is highly recommended to have a dedicated data pump process. Okay. Now, what is the benefit of having data pump process? Let us assume there was some network issue. Okay, network was not working. Data pump went down. But this does not affect the extract. Extract will continue to create the source trail files. Once the network comes back, yeah, hi, who's this? So once the network comes back, what happens is data pump is initiated and it will read from all these trails which are generated. The transactions are transferred onto the target. So this is why data pump is highly recommended. If you are not using data pump, you can use an extract or configure an extract that pushes transactions onto the target. But if you have any issues with the network connectivity or any problems in reaching the target server, your source trails will not be generated. So that's the reason it is highly recommended. And this is why I say that you don't even need to learn it, because nobody will use such a feature. In the data pump process, we can even filter and transform the data. Let's take you want to filter the data based on some condition, or you want to change the date format, or anything you want to do some changes before you apply it onto the target, then it is good to do it with the data pump process. Now, one more question arises. The question is, why are we doing data changes and transformation using data pump process? Why? Because we have a transaction This transaction has impacted maybe 20 rows. Just some random example. Now these 20 rows are captured by your extract process. Okay, extract creates source trails. Source trails are read by data pump. Data pump will send it over the network. Now understand, you have a condition or maybe filter or maybe transformation on the data. Now when this filter condition transformation is applied onto this 20 rows, 10 rows have been removed and 10 rows actually satisfy the condition filter or transformation. Now the benefit of having the conversion or the data transformation with the data pump is you send less data on the network. This is again a part of improving the performance of Golden Gate. Right? So, so once again, the benefit of data pump process and configuring condition filter or transformation setup with the data pump is it might or might not, it might reduce the number of rows because some might not satisfy the condition, and that way you send only the filtered data over the network, which will actually reduce the network usage. So if you have less traffic, definitely you will see a good performance in the network as well, right? So this is the reason data pump, any filtration, any data transformation that you want to do it with the data pump process. Now we have one more scenario: configure multiple data pumps in one-to-many replications so that when one target gets down, only corresponding data pump is affected. This again relates back to our problem number 1. What was the problem number 1? I don't want to use data pump process. What will happen? Let us understand, we are using a broadcast replication. We are broadcasting some data onto multiple servers. Okay. So what is the job of extract? It will read the data, put it into source trails. Okay. Now assume, we are just assuming okay, no need to assume actually. So next we have the data pump process. Now because we have 3 targets, right? I can configure one data pump which is pushing the data onto multiple targets. I don't think this is possible because I never tried it. Maybe it might be possible, but it is not recommended. Why it is not recommended? Because if any target is not reachable, even the others will be affected. Might happen. So what is the benefit? You configure the multiple data pumps because you have 3 target servers, right? This is 1, 2, and 3. So the first data pump will push the data onto the first target, second will push on second, third will push on to the third. Understand, if one target is down, only this data pump will be affected. These two will happily continue with the replication. So in some cases you need to configure multiple data pump process. This generally happens into the broadcast replication. It's really bad. I'm talking about the cop. So once again, data pump process very clear. See, extract job is to extract the data, push it onto the source trail. We also have an initial load extract. And then what is the data pump? It is an optional process but highly recommended. Why it is highly recommended? This is very important interview question, guys. If we do not configure the data pump, and if we configure an extract which is sending data onto the target site, and if there is any network issue, the source trails will not be generated. That's the reason data pump waits for the network to establish and then continue sending the source trails. Also, you must use filter and transformation on the data pump process so that you reduce the amount of data that travels over the network. Okay, good question. We have one question. This is a nice question. Is data pump is necessary in the initial load? No. There is no data pump process at all in initial load. Don't mind. I mean, you will get a lot of clarity when we ourselves are doing the initial load. So data pump is not there in initial load. I mean, I'll revisit the architecture when we are talking about the initial load. Don't worry. So we have source, trail files generated as trace files? No, these are not the trace files of Oracle database. These are the Golden Gate files. So that's why it is known as source trail. That is a name and term used by the Golden Gate software. So those are the files that belongs to Golden Gate, not to Oracle database. So these are not the trace files. So we have one question: data filtering done at data pump level, right? Yes. And I have shown you a benefit, but you know what? You can even have data filtration at the replicate level. So when the replicate process is about to write the transaction onto the target, then also you can filter the data. But what's the problem? Again, as I mentioned, let's take on the source, we have 20 rows affected and 20 are traveled on the network. Over here 20 have received. I mean, we got 20 records. And then when we are filtering, the output is 10 rows that will be affected over here. So the extra 10 which has traveled on the network, it's all waste, right? Wastage of resources. So that's the reason it is always recommended to use the filtration conditions in the data pump process itself. Sometimes it might reduce the records. Otherwise, if all the records are going, then that is something that will continue. How the condition established between source and target? Okay. I think it's very early to talk about how the conditions are set in Golden Gate. Once the, what is the condition?
Hi Arun, Nikhil here.
Yeah, hi Nikhil, tell me.
Yeah, right. I have a question. We see two scenarios here. One, when we configure the data pump process that actually transmitting the trace files, and another
Okay,
where we are not
it's not trace
configuring
files. I'm sorry to interrupt
I
you.
mean, trail files. Yeah,
Yes,
trail
yes.
files. Sorry.
Yeah.
And other scenario was we didn't configure the data pump process and extract process itself transmitting the trail files, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes.
So my question is, for the case where data pump is not configured, extract process is transmitting. In that case as well, extract process is using the trail files.
Yes.
Or
First.
it is directly sending the data.
No. First job is to write into source trail. Second job is to send the data. It is sequential. Okay. Without source trail, it will not send the data. So, but again, as I mentioned, guys, no need to learn it. You will just waste your time. Yeah. So data pump is mandatory. Thanks. We are also going with that one. I'm not going to deviate from something which is not used in real time. There's no point in discussing about it.
Hello, Arun. Yeah. I have a question.
Tell me. Yeah.
Once the data is transferred to the target DB, what is the situation at source trail files? Is it the data is still in the source trail file, or it's moved from source trail files?
No, it will be there. The trail files are normal like your archives that are generated. So like how archives are generated, same way trail files are generated one by one. Again, we need management to delete the source trails. Those are again comes into administration part. We'll understand about how to delete the old traces. Trail files. So I don't know who asked this question about the trace files. That is now coming up to me as well. Sorry, it's not trace, it's trail files. Okay, once the data transfer, then what is the condition of source file? I mean, its answer. How many processes are mandated to configure golden source and target if we are using unidirectional? See, this is very simple, right? Every process, minimum one process you need to configure. So how many processes are mandatory to configure? Basically, you need at least one, right? More than one is depends on the situation, but one is minimum. You need to have at least one process. If you don't configure extract, how your replication will work? If you don't configure the replicate, how data will be applied? So minimum you need each process one quantity. Okay, that was the wrong relation, but it's okay. Right, guys? So, I'm just understanding. I missed adding the extract, which actually directly transfers the data from source to target, because as I mentioned, you don't need to learn it. Don't focus on it. Out of the scenario I have told you guys, just for your information. But again, I would recommend, because this is an architecture video, it's my personal recommendation to all. Please go through this video at least 3-4 times. If your foundation is amazing, you can actually, I mean, it will be very easy for you to talk in interviews. So don't look at learning the commands or remembering the commands. When I personally take some interviews, I never ask for commands. I need the knowledge. I need the workflow. I need, do you really understand what will be the impact of what you are saying? So those are the things which I personally look at, and I hope most of the interviewers will also look at those things. So you just cannot say something where you yourself don't know what would be the impact if you do like that. Okay, so that's why architecture, please make it pretty solid. Okay, next is Golden Gate collector process. This is a very simple process. First thing, no need to configure. We do not configure collector process. I repeat, we do not configure the collector process. It auto starts whenever data is coming from the primary or maybe the source database. Now you will have another question. Come on, how will it be automatically started? I will go back to the manager process. Okay, this is something we are about to learn. We have two manager processes on source and target. What is the job of manager? To maintain the port information 8800. Right, we have two manager processes running on different servers on different ports. When data pump sends the data, it will definitely send it onto this port. On this port, by default, your collector will run. So this collector is auto started. Okay, and you don't configure it. You don't port which is defined inside the manager. It is not defined onto the collector. Whenever data, you don't define any parameter, you don't do anything with the collector, it is auto start. So this, but this needs manager to be up and running. If your manager is down, definitely collector will not work. So that's the reason, I mean, we will talk about manager separately. So collector process will auto start on this port which is defined inside the manager. It is not defined onto the collector. Whenever data pump is sending the data, collector is started on the target server. It will read the incoming data and writes onto the target trails or remote trail, whatever we call. Okay, can we have same port for manager process? I think too early to answer. Just wait for the topic. Yeah. So what is the collector process? Runs on the target system. It actually runs on the target system, receives trails from the data pump, writes them locally onto the remote trail. When we say locally, it is on the target system because collector runs on the target system. It's a background process and does not need to configure. You don't configure it. It is started automatically. Oh, so you guys are feeling okay. One headache is gone. This is not required to configure. Yes, it is not needed to configure. Now let's talk about the replicate process. Okay, so yes, again, how we have extract, data pump, collector. Replicate also has some properties. First one is it is also called as delivery process. If you hear delivery process, apply process, replicate, all are one and the same. The job of a replicate process is it reads from the trails on the target system and then apply changes onto the target database. Also, changes happens in the same order as they were committed on the source system. The way you commit the data, the same way changes are applied onto the target system. Again, when we are dealing with the improvement of performance, or actually the performance tuning of Golden Gate, that time you will understand a few scenarios in this zone, like what is the problem having multiple replicates, and how to resolve the the conflicts in the data. I think too early to talk about it. So changes as they happen in the source, the same order they are applied onto the target. Now there are two types of replicate process. Initial load replicate. Again, we got the same term, right? Initial load. So what happens in initial load? We all know that we have some tables which are already having some data, and I have a blank table on the target system. Only I have the structure of the table. I don't have the rows. So before I can set the replication, I need to capture this data, insert all those rows over here, right? So this is initial load, and then we enable the replication, correct? So this in initial load, we have initial load extract. The same way we also have initial load replicate. Only for initial load, these two processes are exclusively configured. Once the job is done, you can remove the initial load extract, you can remove the initial load replicate, you can configure normal local extract, you can configure a data pump, collector no need to configure, and then replicate. So this will continue your replication. So only for initial load, we have two new processes, that is initial load extract and initial load replicate. These two we are going to see it because we'll be also performing an initial load replication. Okay, so the same way, the way we have initial load extract, we also have initial load replicate. The next one is the normal replicate, which will actually read from your target trail files. This is a normal replicate, which is just reading from the target trail and applying it onto the target database. Okay, so this is a normal replicate. Otherwise, we also have initial load replicate, which directly speaks with initial load extract. So in initial load extract, generally we don't configure the data pump. We just connect the initial load extract with initial load replicate, and then things will continue. Again, guys, a lot of things, because to be very frank, there are a lot of concepts in Golden Gate. Depending on the topic we are in, I will not deviate to a much degree, because right now I cannot talk about initial load more because we are discussing about the architecture, and we already have a dedicated session for it. So some topics, if I really restrict on explaining now, just understand it might be answered in the upcoming lessons, or I will definitely cover up it somewhere while explaining the things. Okay, so the topic is not about the initial load, so I'm just avoiding it. Just understand two types of replicate. One is initial load and another one is change sync replicate. Next is you can filter and transform data using replicate as well, but I showed you one great example where we have seen some performance impact if we do this kind of scenario. So to reduce the network load, what we can do, we can use the filtering and transformation at the data pump level. So that way only less data will travel onto the network. Great, guys. Do we need to stop the transactions and source during initial load extract? There is again theory involved. As I mentioned, we will not discuss about initial load right now. When we are in that topic, you will understand that. And can we have same port for manager process? Yes, we can have same, or we can have different also. Any processes are mandatory. Okay, this is answered. Okay, do we? All right. So more on initial load when you are discussing about initial load. Let's not completely get into initial load. Right now our goal is to understand the architecture. trail files. These are not the trace files. These are Golden Gate files. All committed transactions are returned to these files. Trail files are sent over network from source to target. Basically two types of trail files. One will be on the source server. Another one would be onto the remote server. This is pretty straightforward. Manager process. Yes, this is again important one. It runs on both source and the target servers. You cannot avoid it. You have to run the manager process. The job of manager, it controls other Golden Gate processes and components. So like in manager process, what you can do is you can set auto starting of Golden Gate processes. Okay, let us assume somebody shut down the systems or there was a reboot of the server. If this kind of case happens, what will, I mean, you as a DBA, you need to actually initiate all the processes again, right?